I'm Ron Port from SayAnythingBlog.com. With me is Rod St. Aubyn. He is the head of government affairs for Blue Cross Blue Shield of North Dakota. And I wanted to have Rod on because we've been talking a lot about healthcare exchanges in the state of North Dakota. Rod graciously posted a guest post at SayAnythingBlog.com making Blue Cross Blue Shield's case for implementing exchanges in North Dakota. But going beyond the exchanges, I think the Obamacare policy has been debated for a long time now, and there's aspects of it that are starting to go into law, and I think very shortly here, or not too distant in the future, insurance consumers in North Dakota, employers and individuals alike, are going to start to see some changes in their insurance policies because of Obamacare. And Rod, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about that. What are some of the changes? I mean, what are some of the parts of the law, setting aside the issue of the exchanges, what are some of the parts of the law that are coming up that consumers are going to start to see a difference in terms of the policies that they buy?
Well, in terms of, there's quite a few that have already occurred up until after the enactment. Some of them were like 6 months after the enactment, and I'll just rattle off a few of those. The preventative services with no cost sharing. These new provisions that already went into effect were what's called near-term provisions. Women's preventative health benefits that automatically all benefit plans were supposed to convert to. Coverage for children dependents up to age 26 on their parents' plan. Elimination of lifetime limits. Historically, health insurance plans, all health insurance plans include some limits, either $1 million or $2 million lifetime limit. Those all plans, except for grandfather plans, I guess. So I think that even grandfather plans include this. You could no longer have lifetime limits on those, but that's not a big impact overall on the cost of the health insurance, because we have very few people that ever reach those lifetime limits. In fact, for about a 1.5 year period, I think we only had 8 members that ever exceeded that limit, or close to 2 years. Yes, we only had about 8. And another provision was rescissions, and that a simple way of saying that is you really can't cancel anyone after they have a policy. Well, North Dakota really already had a prohibition against that, so that really isn't impacting anything. And some of the newer aspects of that would be, starting in January 2014, there will be several significant changes. Of course, everyone has to have a qualified health plan by that time, or they will have to face a penalty. But at that point, starting January 1, 2014, insurers can no longer exclude people because of a health condition or whatever for securing coverage in the individual market. And I need to qualify that a little bit. There is a difference between group insurance and what we call the individual insurance, non-group. In the group insurance, it is already a guaranteed issue. So that is no change from the ACA. But where you're going to see a difference in most states are like this, where in the individual market, insurers can establish, certain element of risk, and how large of a risk are they going to bring into their individual market, non-group market. And in North Dakota, we have a good system, actually. If someone is denied coverage in the individual market, they're automatically guaranteed coverage under the state's high-risk pool. It's called CHAND, C-H-A-N-D. It is more expensive. I think it's 130 or 135% of an individual product price. But at least someone that really needs coverage can get coverage in the state of North Dakota. Not every state has a high-risk pool. So anyway, effective January 1 of 2014, insurers can no longer deny coverage for someone with a pre-existing medical condition. And so in effect, all those people that are in CHAN will now be in the individual market. And just to give you an idea, in the CHAN market, even though people pay 135% or higher premiums for that product, even with that, it loses money. And insurers are charged or assessed a certain amount prorated for the amount of business they have in the state to cover that loss in CHAN. and that's to the tune of about $5 million. So those higher users of health care are going to be put in the individual market, and that's where the significant increase that could be seen in North Dakota or any state. The other part of some of the provisions of the health care reform, that's when they will officially define what will the health plans look like. And that's what they call the essential health benefits. Every qualified health plan has to have specific benefits. And so starting on that date, everyone will have some benefits that were possibly not included in plans before. For example, like pediatric, dental, and vision services were typically not found in health insurance plans, and they will be included in those starting in January 1, 2014. There's other restrictions, other taxes that go into effect. For example, there's a health insurance tax that goes into effect in 2014, and that, of course, will have to be passed on to the consumer. And then there's rating bands, and the easiest way to explain that is that insurance historically has been, there's different age bands. So the older you are, historically, you use more health care. And so those higher age bands, rating bands, their premiums are higher than the youngest people, okay, because they use less. Well, this law changes that from a typically 5-to-1 ratio. In other words, the highest rating band can be no more than 5 times more than the lowest rating band. This law changes it from 5-to-1 ratio to 3-to-1, meaning the highest rating band can be no more than 3 times more than the lowest one. How this impacts the health insurance market is any health insurance pool to be effective, you want the young, healthy, I shouldn't say young, you want the healthy people in the pool to offset the cost for some of the people that are not so healthy. And so the more people you can get in there that are healthy, the better it offsets the cost for the other people. Well, by switching from the 5-to-1 to the 3-to-1, it will actually increase the cost for the young people. And the young people are typically the healthier group. And so one of the fears we have is with a very low penalty in this whole thing, are we going to have some of the young people elect to just pay the penalty instead of take the insurance? Since it's a guaranteed issue, they'll just wait and take the insurance when they need it. So that could potentially have an impact on the overall cost of healthcare too.
Now, when you're talking specifically about the essential health benefits, and these are aspects of policies that the government is going to say have to be included in every policy, how are those determined? Are those determined by the federal government? Are those determined by the states? How are those conclusions reached?
Under the ACA, under the Affordable Care Act, it does state that the Secretary of HHS will determine what the essential health benefits are. But what they've done is they've temporarily given that some flexibility to the states to determine. And it gets to be complicated, but they gave the states several options to choose a benchmark plan. And whatever benchmark plan the state selects out of, there are basically 4 options. But anyway, of those 4 options that the state selects, then that becomes the essential health benefits for that state for the year 2014 and 2015. We don't know what that's going to be after that. It's still undecided. We don't know if maybe HHS will just determine that there's one list of benefits that all products in every single state will offer, or if they'll continue to allow the states to determine their own essential health benefits.
And is that something too? Because if it's left up, it sounds like the national laws, it's up to the Department of Health and Human Services. So either HHS can, like you say, issue a list of all the benefits they want covered, or they could leave it up to the states. But that's something that could change from administration to administration. Of course, we've seen, with Republicans and Democrats, they often have some very different priorities for things they think ought to be covered under insurance. Things like contraception and abortion are always very controversial. We could see some swings like that. Obviously the Obama administration might have certain priorities that they would impose now. If we were to elect a Republican president next, those priorities could shift quite a bit. What sort of an impact would that have on the insurance industry if those sort of changes were made?
Well, it'd be very speculative because I don't know what those changes could be. But what they do identify in the actual act is there's 10 broad categories of coverage. And of those 10 coverage, where you get into the specifics, they don't get into. And that's where it has to be defined by either HHS. And yes, it could be. I'll give you one example, autism services, or they don't say specifically that any particular type of autism services have to be provided. But let's say chiropractic care, or I mentioned the pediatric dental and vision services. Well, what does that mean? What is the age group for pediatric? Is that 18? Is that 14? Is it 26? No one knows. And that could definitely be changed by administration to administration. Then when you talk about pediatric and dental services, does that mean braces, in terms of dental services for children? Does that just mean preventative services like teeth cleaning? Does that include extractions and someone needs a cavity filled? No one really knows at that point. Well, that's where that has to be defined. Either they give that flexibility to the states, which are done right now in terms of determining the essential health benefits. But long term, ultimately, that's up to the Secretary of HHS to define, and that could change from administration to administration. And I'm just using those as
Sure.
some minor examples.
Sure. We've and last question. We've talked about a lot of the aspects of the law, and some of them. I mean, it's been obviously a very controversial bit of policy. Some aspects, I think there's been polling out there that suggested they're popular, such as allowing kids to be on their parents' insurance till age 26, or the ending the quote unquote pre-existing conditions. People tend to like those things, but it seems to me that the primary drive of this policy was towards affordability. I think a lot of people saw that as the problem with health insurance and health care, was that it's expensive and getting more expensive all the time. And even the name of the law is, we call it colloquially Obamacare, but the name of the law is the Patient Protection and Affordable Care Act. Affordable being the operative word there. What of these policies that we're talking about is going to make insurance more affordable? Because it seems to me that the impact, getting rid of pre-existing conditions, expanding the areas of coverage that companies like Blue Cross have to provide, it seems to me that that's going to make coverage more expensive.
Yeah, most of, and that's where sometimes it's a misnomer, because what happens is this is really not healthcare reform. What this really is health insurance reform. It's really changing how health insurance is offered and the benefits that are offered and all of that. It does very little to address the actual cost of health care. For example, in North Dakota, for Blue Cross, for every $1 you're paying for a premium, and I don't know what the current one is, but say about at least 90 cents I think it's closer to 92 cents of every $1 actually goes toward the paying of the claims. The rest of that is really, that's our cost of processing the claims. It's our process of setting up a healthcare network with providers. It's all of the IT work, and it's also the taxes that we have to pay. So that comes out of our very small portion of every $1. What most of these changes in the law actually added additional benefits. And we don't object to all of those benefits. As a matter of fact, some of them we fully support, like some of the preventative services. But as an example, on the preventative services, we offered most, if not all of those preventative services already in our plans. The difference is this said there could be no cost sharing, like a copay when you go see a doctor or something like that. Under this, it says there can't be any. Well, the only way the insurer can do that is really increase the premium, to offset that cost. It isn't like the cost is going to go away. But we firmly believe in these preventative services. As far as like adding the age children or dependents up to age 26. North Dakota already had a state law dealing with that. And we already, if you were a full-time student, you could stay on your parents' plan up to the age 26 as long as you're a full-time student. The difference here, this said anyone, immaterial, if they're married, if they're already, let's say they already had a health insurance product themselves and they were 25. This says, well, you can drop that health insurance product and you go on your parents' policy. If you were married, let's say the husband, if he would go on his parents' plan, and the wife would go on her parents' plan. Well, that is adding some cost to those policies, whereas some of those we did already have. They already had their own policies in some cases. We had about 600 people in the individual market that went on to the parents' plan. And in the group market, we had almost 4,000 people that went into the group market. Now, not all of those had health insurance plans. So that's be the first to say that. And the actual cost we've estimated these are rough figures because most of the regulations are not out yet. But when all of the additional benefits and changes of the ACA, we estimate in group coverage the total impact is going to be probably around up to maybe 15% increase in the total cost from when it very started, including the near-term benefits until it's fully implemented. And the biggest impact is in the individual, the non-group plans. Those are going to see the largest increases, and they're going to be about 75%, could be 75 to 100% increases from when it originally started till, when it's fully implemented. But keep in mind, some of those increases, especially in the individual market, for those that go through the exchange, many people are going to be eligible for subsidies, which will offset some of those increases. So it's really hard to say exactly how much of an increase that's going to be. It depends upon their age bands and many, many different factors on there. But there is definitely going to be some that will see a significant increase in the original and premium increase.
All right, Rod, thank you very much for your time. Appreciate it.
You bet.